Hello everyone, welcome back to Witch of the Moon Season 9. We are so excited to be back with you guys this season. Thank you so much for sticking with us, and to everyone who's newly subscribed, welcome and thank you once again for your support. This season, we are very excited to bring you some topics that we have not discussed before. We're going to cover a couple of topics that were requested by you, the viewer, to cover again, but we're going to try to tackle those topics from maybe a different angle this time around. But most of what we're covering this season are things that we have not covered in the past. So I'm really looking forward to this season. I hope that you are too. And thank you again for being here. This season, we are starting off with altars, altar setups, what they look like, how to make it work, and what to do. So before I get into showing you a little bit about how to set up an altar, I'm going to try to flip my camera around. I'm trying to work out the logistics of doing this video the way I envision it in my mind. But altars vary a lot depending on the individual. To me, they're highly individualized. And many people, like myself, have more than one. In a personal video I did recently, I showed the two little mini altars that I have for the Morrigan and Cernunnos that I keep in my house. And they are simply on a bookcase that I have. My husband and my children built a floor-to-ceiling bookcase a few years back to cover up the wall that led to our kitchen so that we could enclose our study, because we were working from home, and with the IRS, in order to count your office space as office space in your home office, it must be completely separated from the rest of your home. So my husband built a wall where it was just open because it was kind of a semi-formal dining area, and then there was a small butler door that went to the kitchen. And so I have taken two of those shelves and converted them into permanent altars in honor of the Morrigan and the Cernunnos, whom I work with. So those altars are a little bit different, and what I may do is just show you some pictures of those towards the end of the video. Then I have a large table, a 3x3 table that my husband got me that slots together. It's all wooden, there's no metal in it. It slots together with the top, and I use that for grand ritual. That is not a permanent altar. I wish I had a permanent space to put it up, because I would like to make that my working altar, since it's a nice big space, but it isn't. So my working altar tends to vary. Sometimes it's my kitchen counter, and I will cleanse the space and treat it just as I would any other altar. As far as how I set those altars up varies. The altar I have for the Morrigan, I have her statuary there. I have little statues of ravens and things that go with ravens. I have some crow feathers that were sent to me from England. I also have some crow feathers that I picked up just from the ground from the crows that have dropped. They've dropped them in the area. And I also put up things that I felt called to put there, like seashells, because although the Morrigan isn't technically associated with the sea, she is a Celtic goddess, and being from Ireland, Ireland is an island, so clearly there's sea all around you. So I consider that an intimate part of the Morrigan, and I have always felt that that was a part of who she is. So I have some seashells there. It also represents the earth element, the water element, excuse me, in the altar. The feathers represent the air. But clearly she is a fiery goddess, so I have candles there that I got from Lady Jane's Bewitchery. I just totally had a total brain, sorry. Nadia is the owner of Lady Jane's Bewitchery, and Nadia Romanov does some fantastic candles. So she did me some Morrigan candles a few years back, and they're just like little votive-sized candles, but they're fantastic, and so I have those on the altar. And then I have some cups that the wonderful Sterling made for me. If you have not seen her work, she's fantastic. She also sent me a cone incense burner that matched, but the feathers are red and black for the Morrigan, and I have those up on that altar as well. And again, if I can, I'll show you pictures. With Cernunnos, I have a lot of earthy type things. My daughter had given me an incense tower that was some trees. It was the Speak No Evil, Hear No Evil. And so I have that up on his altar, plus a card that Jennifer sent me from her trip to Ireland recently. And then I have a candle holder with a skull candle that that Sterling sent me. And then I have like a tree incense burner. It's like a stick incense burner. It doesn't work because the hole where you're supposed to stick the incense isn't open enough to put a stick in there, but I like it anyway, and I still will burn the incense and just set it on there, and I have that up there. I also have acorns. I have a beautiful candle that Nathan Keekle sent me for a Yule swap that we did 2 years ago now. That candle is the most amazingly masculine smelling candle. It just smells like a lovely, clean men's cologne, and I absolutely adore it. So I have that up on his altar along with a small chime candle holder on each one of them. The Morrigan's is blue with gold stars on it, and the Cernunnos is white with a black pentacle on it. So I have that there. I also keep my grand ritual cup on Cernunnos' altar for some reason. I just always felt compelled to do that. But I put a lot of like leaves, dry leaves, acorns, things like that on his altar, things that I feel connect me to him. And then I have a goat head that, a skull that's painted that we found in a shop, my husband and I, when we were in Marshall, Texas, out near Cato Lake, which is the only natural lake in Texas. And this painted skull just instantly spoke to me. One, I love goats. I absolutely adore goats. And this one had been a pet of theirs, and when it passed, they cleaned it, and a friend of theirs painted the skull, and they decided to sell it because they needed to clear out the shop. So my husband bought it for me, and I keep that for the buka. So it sits above his altar because his altar was just too small to hold it with everything else. But to me, I associate that to some great deal with the Bukadu and with Cernunnos. So that is there. So, as far as my altar setup, it was more just what I felt compelled to put on there. Now, for ritual, when I'm doing a grand ritual for a Sabbath, I have a specific methodology for setting up my altar. Again, the altar setup varies for me a lot depending on the season and so forth. I'm in the process of making different coverings for my altars for the different seasons. I have one that I use strictly for Samhain, and I have one that I use strictly for Yule that I did not make. That one I did not make. The Samhain one I did make. The Yule one I did not make. It was just a Christmassy like tablecloth that was red and green and gold plaid that just called to me, and I really liked it and it fit the table well, so I utilize it for that. But as far as colors, setup, and so forth, there are certain things that are always on my altar. I always have a candle representing the goddess, and I always have a candle representing the god so that I might light them and invite them into my ritual. I always have my cauldron, which is about this big around, on my altar. I have incense on my altar whenever I do a ritual or a working of any type. So I have a space that's for the goddess. I have a space for the god. I have my cauldron, which is where I will usually do the spell working, or I may burn incense in it. I use my cauldron for a lot of different things, and we're going to get into that later this season because we're going to cover cauldron magic. So we'll talk more about that, but that's always on my altar. I usually have candles, different colors for different seasons, and I usually almost always have some sort of earth-bound decoration. So I may put seashells, leaves, fruits of some sort like acorns or nuts, things like that. I always have my cup for the offering for the cakes and wine portion of my ritual. And I'm trying to think what else I always have on the altar. Sometimes instead of incense, I'll use oil because I'll use my oil burner, and I do that specifically around Samhain. So I will sometimes do that. Sometimes I have my divinatory tools also on my altar, especially if I'm trying to charge them for a specific purpose or I'm going to use them in the course of the ritual. So that's also something that I often have on there. I will usually use something to put into my mind the image of the god or goddess. So I may put the picture or the card, and I may take things off of their permanent altars to use in that altar setup in honor to them. So I often have feathers on my altar. I often will put her statue on this side. Typically when I do it, I have the goddess on the left side and I have the god on the right. Now I've seen people reverse that, and I don't think it honestly matters, but it's just what feels right to me, because my eye tends to draw towards the left, so I like to focus on the goddess. As I said in my 30 questions witchy tag that I did for my personal channel, if you haven't seen that, and that's what I'm referring to, but I work more with the goddess than I do with the god. Simply, I think, because I'm a woman, and as a mother, and as a wife, and as my crone phase is rapidly approaching, I feel more drawn to her, but I do feel the need for that masculine energy. So I will honor them both. And I will change my candles based on the colors of the seasons. It used to be that I strictly followed, you know, DJ, what's her last name? Tucker? No, that's S.J. Tucker, the singer. Oh, geez, I don't remember. There's a lady who wrote a book on Celtic practice, and DJ Conway. Her name was DJ Conway. And I liked her book for what it was. It gave a lot of good ideas, but I don't necessarily agree with everything that she said in the book. I liked her use of the colors, and I have found that the colors that I use tend to be those that are traditional in the Cornish practice also. I didn't realize that, but I usually will have 3 colored candles that represent the maiden, mother, and crone specifically to me, and I will also associate them with the different aspects, the inseminator, the father, and the mage for the god as well. So, but my focus once again tends to be on the goddess. And I will usually have candles of those colors. Sometimes I'll vary my colors of the candles to coincide with what speaks to me for the season. So Samhain will be red, orange, and black. Yule will be gold, green, and red. Emulk will be white, pale yellow, and light pink. Ostara will be pink, light blue, and light yellow, or a light green. Then Bealtaine will be green, gold, and red for passion and lust, and then so on and so forth. So it varies depending on the season and what I feel drawn to, but there's a certain way that I will always set it up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the camera, and I'm going to turn the camera back on in a minute. And what I'm going to do is set up a little altar and kind of show you how I set up an altar when I do one for grand ritual. And then I will also try to interject pictures of my permanent altars. I may just take a close-up picture of each and somehow add it into this video at the end so that you can see what that looks like. But I'm going to pause the camera now, and we will come back in a minute. Okay, so welcome back. Thank you for bearing with me through that pause. This is just kind of a mini setup of what I would do on my altar for, like, say, grand ritual. As you can see, I really need to clean this off. My cauldron would be there in the middle. Usually the lid's not on it, and the lid is really dusty. I think when we cover the topic of cauldron magic, I'm going to talk about cauldron care, because clearly I need to take some. But I will have my cauldron in the middle. I have a pentacle disc that I put in the middle of my altar. I have a cloth of some sort. This is one that I actually use when I do readings. So when I do my tarot readings, or I do a reading for a client or something like that, this is the cloth that I use. But it was convenient, close, and I like the fact that it has the pentacle on it. So it's really actually quite large. So again, this is just kind of a compressed idea of what my altar would look like for a grand ritual. This is my incense burner. It's an oil burner, but I also have an incense burner that I would use on occasion, like it's a stick holder, so I could put that in there. I would have a candle representing the god, a candle representing the goddess. I light those to bring them into my practice and to welcome them, something to represent each of the deities, and some things just to decorate the altar, to give it not only beauty and honor of the god and goddess. Oh, there's my incense burner right here, as a matter of fact. This is my incense burner, so that might, be here in place of my 3 ladies that are my oil burners. But clean that off real quick. But I will light some sort of incense, because the combination of the elements of fire and air to bring Lord and Lady together, to give me some sort of unity in my working or in my ritual. So this is kind of what an altar setup would look like for me. obviously, like I said, it's kind of compressed and compact. Usually there's much more space and there's more decoration. I would have more candles. The candles may be bigger. I usually use chime candles, although these are actually cake candles I got from Walmart, and I liked them because they were silver and gold. You know, the silver's there, the gold's here. So I like that because to me, I always think of the Lord and Lady. I actually burn these almost daily. I use one of these every day just to burn as a thank you and an offering to the Lord and Lady. So like I said, I may use things like pine cones or acorns. This kind of big acorn. The acorns, this comes from my neighbor's tree. My acorns are about that big. His acorn's huge. There are different species of acorn, for those of you that don't know, and some of them, like these, I think you can just crack them open and eat them as they are, but the small ones, like what I get on my tree, you have to boil because they have tannin in them. So if you want to make cakes, like I'll usually have some sort of an offering out here also, and it may vary. It may be cookies that I've baked for a specific holiday, like for example, Bieltana. I like to make cookies out of sunflower flour. So flour that's been made from sunflower seeds, I will use that. Or I will use oak flour. You can actually buy acorn flour, so I will use that instead of regular flour. So things like that. I'll have a plate here with my offering on it for my cakes and wine, or something that I'm offering. If I'm doing spell work, I always have my charcoal in here. Sometimes I use water in here, and I'm going to get more into that when we do the week on Cauldron Magic, because this plays a lot into my magic and into my practice, and especially into my ritual, but you have to be careful with it in terms of you need to take good care of it, otherwise it's not going to last you too terribly long. So although the lid looks dusty, some of this is actually from curing the cauldron, which means I put too much on there, but I always clean it out. You can put water in here, just make sure you don't leave water in there, otherwise it'll rust. It will indeed rust. But you know, I will use this to burn things, like if I'm doing a ritual and part of my ritual includes, if part of my ritual includes doing away with things that don't serve me anymore, like it's springtime when I'm manifesting things and I want new things to grow and I'm trying to plant new seeds, I may write on the seeds and I'll put them in here, and this will hold them until I plant them. Or if I'm burning something, it goes in here. Intentions and so forth that I want to send out to the universe, and then I will take this outside and set my intentions out to the four corners. Sometimes I will put things out here for the four quarters. I try to actually include something that's water, earth, air, and fire. I consider the incense both fire and air. I will have these for earth. I will have seashells for water. The feathers obviously correspond with air. So, you know, there's a lot of different things, but I try to incorporate all of that into my altar space. So this is just kind of a mini interpretation of what an altar setting might look like. And of course, everybody's altars are going to vary depending on that person's needs and wants and what have you. And I'm trying to turn the camera back around. It doesn't want to cooperate. So sorry about that. Okie dokie smoky. It's going to turn on me, isn't it? It is. So, okay, Kit. So anyhow, everybody's altars are very personalized to them. I'm just going to turn the camera around. Some of these things have come off of my altar, so I'm just bear that in mind. Like in my Morgan altar, the statue is at the back. So I'm going to flip the camera around for a second. Right, I'm trying to get my finger in the picture here. Right, and that is my Morgan altar. That clearly is my Carnunos altar. In that big space next to the one picture of Carnunos, the card that Jen gave me that I have on this altar now to show you, that's where that goes. And then right behind that big bottle of Morgan whiskey is where my statue that's on this altar currently goes. So those are my permanent altars, and those I change out periodically to try to get that ugly mustard yellow wall out of the way. I will change out my altars. I try to freshen them up at least every season. So there's somebody coming home. I think my daughter may be home. So I hope that's helpful to you. Blessed be, and have a great day. Okay, sorry about that. It seemed a little rushed, but I apologize. I just wanted to say again, that's just some basics to setting up an altar. Really, it's highly individualized. What goes on your altar, the colors you use, whether you use a cloth, you don't use a cloth, if it's in a windowsill, if it's on a tree stump outside, if it's in your home, if it's not predominantly displayed, is really up to you and to your particular situation and to what your lifestyle allows for you. I used to be bothered by the fact that I didn't have a permanent altar in my space, which is why I set that up. But that was me personally, and it was only because everybody else shared these beautiful spaces that they had, and I wanted to honor my God and goddess in some way, so I did that. Another really neat idea that I saw is some of those cubby bookcases, the ones that have like the four little, 6 little slots in it like this. I believe it was I think it was a 9 boxed square. So it had 3 rows of 3 little boxes. And what they had done was they were trying to show a subtle way to have an altar in your home, or a way to honor the elements in your home. And so in the middle space, they had, I think, like a mirror or something like that for spirit, something to represent that. Then in the top box in the middle, they had a plant for earth. Over here, they had like seashells in the middle one, on the end one in the middle row. Then in the middle of the bottom row, they had like candles or something for fire, like a potpourri burner. And then over here they had like hanging wind chimes. They put like a screw into the shelf so that the wind chimes hung down, so that it represented the element of air. But it looked just like some sort of a display that you would have, because they had books in the other shelves, and things like that. So it looked kind of like a neat little display case. So people that don't know won't necessarily go, oh my God, you're a witch and you have an altar in your home. But you could use the top of that shelf for an altar, and I thought that that was a really, really cool idea. So be creative. Allow yourself to be creative. Do what's drawn to you. Some people have a lot on their altars. Some people don't. Some people have a cover on their altars. Some people don't. Some people are minimalist. They like just the littlest thing. So allow yourself to be creative and do what you are drawn to do, because there's no right or wrong to altar setup. There's just what seems right to you, as long as you are paying homage to the elements that need to be there for your practice. So if you don't work with the god, if you only work with the goddess, maybe you want multiple goddess statues. If you work with the god, but you don't work with the goddess necessarily, but you still want to show balance in your altar, then you can have something that represents that for you, that's not necessarily predominant in your altar or the focus of your altar, but is still an element on your altar. So keeping that in mind, I say be creative, get out there and do what feels right to you. Thank you again for watching. We're really excited to be back, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Blessed be.